Hey, I'm Paul, and in this video, I'm going to tell you about the Hello Kitty case, or the Hello Kitty curse. This is a very disturbing case. I think it's one of the most disturbing ones I've ever talked about on my channel, and one I wasn't even sure I wanted to share, because everything that happens is really intense. But I'm going to censor it a little bit because, honestly, there are a lot of really awful details that I don't think are necessary to tell you, so I'm going to leave those out. But I will still tell you the general story, and even then, it's a horrible story. This happened in Hong Kong in 1999, when a girl just 14 years old walked into a police station super paranoid and scared. The police officers asked her what was wrong, and she said she was being haunted by a ghost. Obviously, the police thought she was crazy or hallucinating, because why would someone come into a police station to talk about a ghost? But since she really did look scared, they let her speak. She said that a woman, about 20 years old, visited her every night. She would appear to her covered in blood, and she described her physical appearance. The police tried to calm her down or help her, but they were honest with her. They told her that they didn't handle paranormal matters there and that there was nothing they could do. They asked if she wanted to talk to a therapist or a psychologist, but then she confessed. She helped kill a woman, and that's why the woman was haunting her, or appearing to her. The identity of this girl is protected because she was a minor when these crimes happened, and because she cooperated with the police. She was the one who confessed everything, and who helped the police the most to find the body, with the investigation, and all of that. So nobody knows her name, nobody knows who she is, only what she did is known. And this girl, when she spoke to the police, was 14 years old. But when she committed the crime, she was only 13. She did this together with 3 other men who were between 20 and 30 years old, who were part of the Chinese mafia. There's a name, but it's in Chinese, so I can't pronounce it. But this is a very famous organized crime mafia in China. They're in different parts of the country, they have several members, and the members have a lot of money. But today, we won't be talking about the whole mafia, but rather about these 3 who took part in the murder and torture of the victim. I want to mention that they were the ones who mainly hurt the victim, but the girl, the 13-year-old, would join in from time to time. And the reason why this 13-year-old girl was hanging out with these men in their 20s and 30s, who were gangsters, was because she, at 13, was dating one of them who was 34 years old. To tell the story in chronological order, we'll start with the victim, who was later identified as Fan Man Yi, 23 years old. Fan worked as a hostess at a nightclub, but I found several sources, and some said she was a hostess, others said she was a waitress, and others said she was more like a companion or a prostitute. Fan had a very tough life. Her parents abandoned her when she was a child, so she grew up in orphanages. And when she turned 16, she was kicked out of the orphanage because back then, or at that time in China, they would kick girls out of orphanages at 16 since they were supposedly able to support themselves by then. I don't know if that's still the rule today, and if that's still the age limit for staying in an orphanage, because 16 is really young, and at that age, you can't support yourself, you can't feed yourself, you can't get a proper job to sustain your life. And that was the case for Fan, because when she was kicked out of the orphanage, she had to do some illegal work just to eat, and she started using drugs. Around this time, she also had a child. Fan kept doing these illegal jobs to support herself, and now her child. And by 1997, she was already working as a prostitute, like officially, because she even had a manager by then. There was already someone who handled or managed her clients, and it was a bit safer than when she was doing it all on her own. So this manager or agent or handler, whatever you want to call him, would find clients for her, and many of these clients were part of the Chinese mafia I mentioned earlier. And among them, Fan had a regular client named Chan Manlock, who was also a member of the mafia. And one day, Fan decided to steal this man's wallet, which had about $4,000 in it. Manlock later realized that Fan had stolen his money and demanded that she return the $4,000 plus an extra $1,000 for being disrespectful. He gave her a deadline to come up with the money, and once that deadline passed, he went back to Fan to collect it. Fan gave him the $4,000, but told him she couldn't get the other $1,000 because the time he gave her was too short. She said it would take her longer, and maybe she would be delayed because she didn't make much money and also had to support herself and her son. Obviously, Manlock didn't care at all about Fan's story and decided to kidnap her so she would pay him the money. And that's how, on March 17th, along with 2 of his friends, who were also in the mafia, they kidnapped Fan. They had been spying on her, saw her alone on a street, shoved her into the trunk of their car, and took her to some apartments that were in terrible condition, which also belonged to the mafia. Manlock's plan was to kidnap her so she would pay him back the money, and the way she was going to pay was by offering her services. This means he would sell her to his friends, family members, or people from the mafia so they could spend time with her and that way get back the money she had stolen from him. But on the very first night of the kidnapping, they decided to beat her all night long for hours and hours without stopping. They beat her really badly, and she was left in a really serious condition. She had a lot of injuries. They also abused her. And the next day, they continued with this torture. The torture was extremely severe and kept getting worse. They beat her with metal pipes, cut her with knives, and something especially traumatic was that they forced her to laugh and smile while they tortured her. Because if she didn't, they would get angry and hit her even harder. All the information that is known about the torture and what they did to Fan was given in the statement by the 14-year-old girl, and she only talked about the things she witnessed. So there are many other things they did to her, but she wasn't there to witness them. I also want to clarify that in some of these things, she herself participated. As I mentioned, Manlock's plan was to sell her in order to get his money back, but this plan didn't work anymore because his potential clients didn't want her anymore. She was already badly beaten, she could barely move, so they didn't want her anymore. They didn't want to be with her. This didn't matter to Manlock. He had already forgotten about the money. The only thing he wanted was to have fun with Fan. He got a lot of enjoyment out of torturing her, which is completely sick. This torture lasted for about a month and kept escalating. They got more creative over time, coming up with more ideas. Things that I won't mention because they're just too sick. But among the less extreme ones that I can tell you about, they would drip melted wax on her body to burn her and melt plastic so it would stick to her skin. They also cut her and put things in her wounds, inside her wounds, and forced her to drink her own urine and eat her own feces. On May 15th, after almost a month of torturing her every day, these men and the girl decided to go out to eat. Every time they went out somewhere, they would lock Fan in the bathroom, lock the door, and then lock the apartment so she couldn't try to escape. But even if she wanted to escape, she couldn't. She was already very weak. She couldn't move, and they weren't feeding her. She was in a very critical condition. Even so, they locked her in the bathroom, closed the door, and went out to eat. They came back hours later, and that's when the girl, the 13-year-old, wanted to go into the bathroom. So she went into the bathroom and found Fan's body. Unfortunately, Fan was already dead, lying in the bathtub, and she was covered in an orange pus-like liquid. Some of it was pus, and I'm not really sure what the rest was, but it was a liquid that her body released. One of the men suggested that so they wouldn't find Fan's body and they wouldn't get in trouble, the way they should get rid of the body was by cutting it into small pieces and scattering them in different places so they wouldn't get caught. To do this, they decided to mutilate her, and to remove the skin and flesh from her bones, they boiled her body in a pot. It's said that while they had Fan in a pot on the stove, they were also cooking noodles at the same time. Later, the girl also confessed that after removing Fan's body, they used that same pot to make food. At this point, you might be wondering what all of this has to do with Hello Kitty. The reason this is called the Hello Kitty case, or the Hello Kitty curse, is because, as I mentioned, they divided her body into several parts so they could hide it. Most of Fan's body was never found, but her skull was discovered. These men had put it inside a large Hello Kitty stuffed toy. They put her skull inside Hello Kitty's head and sewed it back up. The police found only a few of Fan's remains. They found the Hello Kitty doll. They found one of her teeth on the floor. I think it was in the kitchen or the bathroom. And in the refrigerator, they found some jars containing some of her organs. So they knew they had a body, but the cause of death was unknown. On one hand, they had the girls' version of everything that happened, the kidnapping, the torture, and the whole case. Then on the complete opposite side of the story, they had the men's version, which was entirely different in every single way. They claimed that Fan had been working for their organization, but that she did so of her own free will, that it was all completely consensual, and that Fan was struggling with a severe addiction to methamphetamine. So one day, they left her alone in the apartment, and she took so many drugs that she overdosed and died. Since they were supposed to be looking after her, they got worried and didn't know what to do. They didn't know what to do with the body, and they couldn't go to the police because then it would come out that they had been giving her drugs and that she was taking them willingly. So they didn't know what to do and didn't want to get in trouble, so they decided to hide the body. They said maybe it wasn't the best way to handle things because the worst part of it all was how they hid her body. But they said they couldn't think of any other option, so they had to do it. So the police really didn't know who to believe. They were leaning a bit more toward the girl's confession because she was the one who came forward, she told them everything, and she also admitted things that implicated herself. So it wasn't like she could be lying, but they also thought she was crazy because of the story at the beginning about Fan appearing to her every night. Since they didn't know the cause of death, they couldn't convict these men of homicide, but they did convict them of involuntary manslaughter, meaning accidental, because they said they never meant to kill her, that it wasn't their purpose, their mission, their goal, or anything like that. It was simply an accident, and she poisoned herself. The girl was released because she had already confessed and because she was a minor. Meanwhile, these men were sentenced to 20 years. Maybe 20 years sounds like a lot, but this happened in 1999, 20 years ago, which means that this year, 2019, they're either already free or getting ready to be released, which really scares me and makes me angry that people who hurt someone so much could be out on the street. It's also worth mentioning that before they were sent to prison, they underwent psychological evaluations and nothing was found to be wrong with them. The only strange thing, or the only thing the psychologist noted, was that they didn't feel any remorse about what happened. As I mentioned at the beginning, Fan's ghost was appearing to this 3-year-old girl, and that's why she confessed. So, since this case became so big, especially in China, many people who believed in ghosts wanted to contact Fan. They thought she was an easy ghost to reach because of the way she died, and because she had already appeared to someone else. So people would regularly gather in the apartment where Fan was tortured and murdered. They performed rituals, tried to contact her and other spirits, and this went on for several years, until in 2012, the government decided to demolish the place because it was causing too many problems. At first, it was a bit more innocent, like rituals and attempts to contact her. But later people started doing more serious things, so they tore it down. But then they built another building in its place, and now it's a hotel. And finally, I want to mention that Fan's son is okay. Fan's son was very young when this happened to his mom, so he doesn't have any memories of her, but apparently he grew up well. I don't know if he was adopted, I don't know who took care of him, but currently he's in college in Singapore, and he always wears one of the necklaces that the police found from Fan, so it's like he always has his mom with him. That was everything about the case. I hope you liked it, I hope you found it interesting, and please leave your thoughts in the comments section. If you liked the video, please give it a like. If you're not subscribed, you should subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you get notified every time I upload a new video. And if you want to follow me on my social media, I'll leave you my mediocre Twitter where I don't post anything interesting, but if you want to follow me, you're more than welcome to. I'll also leave you my Instagram where I'm a little more active, and if you want to mention me in your stories, I'd really appreciate it, because then I share you in my stories too. Don't forget that you can now become a channel member, and there are some perks. If you want to check it out, all you have to do is click on join, and then you can choose whether to be an Illuminati or a little triangle. I love you all so very much. Thank you so much for watching all of these videos. Adios!